Welcome to this journey into one of the most unsettling cases ever recorded in United States history. Before we start, I encourage you to leave a comment telling us where you are watching from and the exact time you are listening to this narration. We are curious to know which places and at what times of the day or night these stories reach. The summer of 1844 brought a dark and terrifying shadow over one of Charleston's most prominent families. The story I am about to tell comes from courthouse records, church registries, letters, newspaper clippings, and oral accounts that survived long enough to be documented by university researchers in the 1960s. What makes this story particularly chilling is not just the violence, although there was plenty of that, but the deliberate, patient way revenge was carried out. The Rutland family estate sat 3 miles north of Charleston, hidden among sprawling oak trees draped with Spanish moss that seemed to murmur secrets whenever the coastal breeze passed through. The main house, with its large columns and symmetrical wings, overlooked the Cooper River, where merchant ships would sail on their way to the busy harbor. It was in this house that Sarah Elizabeth Rutland, the wife of well-known attorney William Harrison Rutland, first started showing symptoms of a wasting illness of unknown origin. But to understand what truly happened during those hot summer months, we need to look at the household before death began its quiet harvest. The Rutland plantation had been in the family for 4 generations, building great wealth through rice farming and the work of more than 70 enslaved people. William Harrison Rutland inherited the estate at 25 and expanded it through smart business deals and connections with Charleston's elite. Sarah Elizabeth, born Sarah Elizabeth Baker, came from another leading Charleston family. Their marriage in 1835 was celebrated with one of the grandest weddings the city had seen, uniting 2 of Charleston's oldest families. They had 3 children, Thomas, 8, Catherine, 6, and baby James, born in January 1844. On the surface, the Rutlands represented the height of antebellum Southern prosperity. The household staff consisted mainly of enslaved people who kept both the home and its residents in perfect condition. Mary, a house servant, had served the family since William was a boy. Richard, the stable master, was famous for his skill with horses. Hannah was the children's nurse, and Martha, a young woman bought from a nearby plantation 2 years earlier, served as Sarah's personal attendant. Rebecca, however, held the most unusual position. Born into slavery on the Rutland estate about 40 years earlier, she worked as the family midwife. Dika, her mother, had come from the Gula region and had knowledge of herbs and healing. Rebecca helped deliver many children, both at the plantation and in other wealthy households nearby. She was trusted enough that William's father allowed her to maintain a small garden behind the kitchen to grow medicinal plants. Few knew that Rebecca had delivered William himself, all of his siblings, and all 3 of his children. In a society sharply divided by race, she held a rare position, essential yet almost invisible, moving silently through the household while the family barely noticed her. The events that would destroy the Rutland household began quietly in March 1844, about 2 months after baby James was born. Sarah began to feel fatigued, with headaches and occasional stomach pain. At first, these were thought to be normal postpartum effects, but her condition worsened as spring went on. By early May, she looked pale and had lost noticeable weight. Dr. Edward Thompson, the family physician, thought it might be malaria and gave her an iron and quinine tonic. The medicine brought no relief. Instead, Sarah grew weaker, eating barely a few spoonfuls of broth. By June, she could not leave her room without help. The once lively young woman who managed the house so carefully became a shadow of herself, confined to her bed behind drawn curtains. Dr. Thompson visited more frequently, using leeches, mercury, arsenic, and bismuth, common treatments at the time, but nothing helped. Her decline seemed to speed up with each treatment. By early July, the household revolved around Sarah's sick room. Servants rushed with fresh linens, water, and small amounts of food she could tolerate. Rebecca stayed mostly in the background, quietly preparing herbal teas that were believed to soothe her stomach or lower fever. She moved through the house unnoticed, yet always observing. If anyone had watched closely, they would have noticed that she was always present when Dr. Thompson spoke with William, or when the kitchen prepared food for Sarah. In a household used to treating enslaved people as invisible, no one questioned her quiet presence. On the morning of July 23, 1844, Sarah Elizabeth Rutland died at 29. The official cause was recorded as a wasting illness of unknown origin, leaving her husband and children with little closure. The funeral, held 2 days later at St. Michael's Episcopal Church, was attended by nearly every prominent family in the city. She was buried in the Rutland family plot at Magnolia Cemetery, marked by a white marble angel imported from Italy. Life in the house slowly tried to return to normal. William threw himself into work, rarely seeing his children. Thomas and Catherine were cared for mainly by Hannah, while baby James was tended by Martha. The house settled into the heavy quiet that often follows tragedy. About 3 weeks after Sarah's funeral, William began showing symptoms similar to hers: headaches, nausea, and growing weakness. At first, he thought it was grief and overwork, but by August his condition worsened. Dr. Thompson was called again. The similarity to Sarah's illness was alarming. He tried tonics, purgatives, and bloodletting, but nothing worked. By September, William was confined to the same bed where his wife had died, skin yellowed, suffering stomach cramps that left him nearly unconscious. Whispers of contagion spread, but no children or staff were sick. Something else, something targeted and malicious, was at work. It was Martha who first voiced suspicion. One evening in mid-September, she told Richard, the stable master, "I've seen Rebecca adding something to the master's tea, a powder from a small pouch she keeps at her waist. She does it when no one is watching." Richard initially dismissed her, trusting Rebecca after decades of service. She was a healer, not a poisoner. But Martha insisted. She had seen Rebecca collect leaves and roots from places beyond her garden. Richard agreed to watch, mainly to calm Martha. 3 days later, they confirmed her story. Rebecca was adding a grey powder from a hidden pouch to William's tea. Unsure what to do, Richard spoke to Mary, the eldest servant. She listened silently, then whispered, "There are things about Rebecca you don't know, things from before you came here." Mary revealed that Rebecca had a daughter about 20 years earlier. The girl's father was William Harrison Rutland Sr. The child, fair-skinned with green eyes, had been sold to a Georgia plantation at 3 years old, despite Rebecca's pleas. She had never recovered emotionally. Later, a letter revealed the daughter died at 16, under suspicious circumstances, working in a house connected to Sarah's family. Mary believed Rebecca had been waiting for years to take revenge on both families, destroying the bloodlines that had taken her child. Richard and Mary watched Rebecca secretly and saw her adding powder to William's tea and baby James's milk. They intercepted it and searched her cabin while she helped Dr. Thompson. Hidden under the floorboards were pouches with powders and dried plants, a journal documenting symptoms of arsenic poisoning, and a lock of light brown hair tied with a blue ribbon from her lost daughter. Dr. Thompson confirmed the powders contained arsenic and plant toxins. Authorities were called on September 20th, 1844. Rebecca was arrested without resistance, showing no surprise or regret. The trial in October became a sensation in Charleston. Without legal defense, she listened silently as witnesses gave evidence. Dr. Thompson testified that William improved once the poison was removed. Martha and Richard described Rebecca's actions, and Mary explained her motive. Rebecca spoke once in her defense. "I brought them into this world. It was fitting that I should usher them out. What was taken from me cannot be restored. What I have taken cannot be undone. there is a balance in all things. The jury deliberated less than an hour and found her guilty. On November 2, 1844, Rebecca was hanged publicly at the Charleston workhouse, the only female slave executed for poisoning in the city. She remained composed until the end. William recovered but never fully regained his health, dying in 1855 at 46. Thomas inherited the plantation but sold it in 1871 and moved to Baltimore. Catherine married a businessman and relocated north. James became a physician. The Rutland estate was divided and sold after Reconstruction, and the main house burned in 1894. Excavations in 1965 uncovered foundations, smaller buildings and artifacts, including a blue bottle containing traces of arsenic mixed with plant toxins. What makes this case so haunting is not just the careful planning of Rebecca's revenge, but also the systems of power and oppression that created the circumstances for such a tragedy. Rebecca, torn away from her child and denied any legal way to fight the injustices done to her, found her power in the only place available, her knowledge of herbs and medicines, passed down through generations of women. The Rutland poisoning case faded from public memory as the Civil War and its aftermath reshaped the social and economic life of the South. It briefly resurfaced in 1962 when historian Margaret Johnston discovered sealed court records while researching a book about antebellum Charleston. Her notes, later stored at the University of South Carolina archives, were lost in a building renovation in 1968. The documents themselves were reportedly destroyed in a courthouse fire the following year. What remains are fragments, a few newspaper reports, entries in church death registers, brief mentions in personal letters from the time, and the oral histories Johnston collected before her notes disappeared. From these pieces, historians have tried to reconstruct this dark chapter of Charleston's history, revealing the complicated and often terrible relationships between the enslaved and their enslavers, between those with power and those who found ways to resist it. Today, the land where the Rutland plantation once stood is overgrown with forest and brush. There is no marker to indicate where the main house stood, nor the small cabin where Rebecca prepared her deadly mixtures. The graves of Sarah Elizabeth and William Harrison Rutland can still be found in Magnolia Cemetery, their headstones weathered but still readable. Rebecca's final resting place, like that of most enslaved people, is unmarked and unknown. Locals say that on certain nights, when the moon is new and the Spanish moss hangs still in the humid air, visitors report the smell of herbs on the breeze, rosemary, thyme, and something sharper, almost metallic. Some claim to hear the soft grinding of leaves into powder and the low murmur of a woman speaking in a language no longer understood. Among Charleston's oldest families, there remains an unspoken fear of certain teas, certain herb combinations believed to be capable of enacting justice long denied. In the years after Rebecca's execution, other cases of suspected poisoning by enslaved people were reported throughout the Carolinas, though none were pursued as vigorously or documented as well as the Rutland case. South Carolina law in 1846 even forbade enslaved people from growing or possessing certain plants known to be medicinal or toxic. The story of Rebecca and the Rutland family shows how vengeance, when all other avenues are blocked, can appear in the most everyday acts: preparing food and drink, caring for the sick, helping with childbirth. It reminds us that power, however complete it seems, is never absolute, and that those considered powerless often create their own means of resistance. Martha, the woman whose observations led to Rebecca's arrest, was sold to a plantation in Alabama in 1845, her fate unknown. Richard stayed at the Rutland plantation until emancipation, later starting a small livery stable in Charleston. Mary lived to see freedom, dying in 1872 at about 85 years old. In her final years, she refused to speak of Rebecca or the events of 1844, turning away whenever they were mentioned. Perhaps the most haunting question remains: In a world built on injustice, where can real justice exist? Rebecca's acts, horrific as they were, grew from a lifetime of suffering few today can fully understand. The legal execution that ended her life enforced laws designed to protect the very system that destroyed her family. There are no heroes here, only victims caught in the machinery of an institution that corrupted everything it touched. Descendants of the Rutledge and Baker families continued to suffer mysterious illnesses into the 1880s, sometimes showing symptoms like those experienced by Sarah and William. Whether this was lingering effects of the poison, genetic vulnerability, or the influence of family memory is unknown. By 1900, both family lines had shrunk considerably, with many branches ending without children or in early deaths. Whether this was the final fulfillment of Rebecca's revenge or just natural family decline is impossible to say. In Charleston's whispered stories, the name Rebecca still carries dread, a warning of revenge reaching beyond death. Attempts to develop the former Rutledge plantation repeatedly failed in the 20th century, with equipment breaking, workers falling ill, and financial setbacks. Locals believed the land itself was poisoned, not by herbs, but by history and injustice. In 1969, during the last survey before the land returned to wilderness, archaeologists found beneath Rebecca's cabin a small bundle wrapped in blue cloth, containing the skeletal remains of an infant who likely died around 1824 or 1825. Was this another loss that fueled her decades-long quest for revenge? Records are silent, and the remains were reburied without ceremony. The story of Rebecca, the enslaved midwife who poisoned her mistress's bloodline, blends history and folklore, revealing a dark truth beneath the romanticized vision of the antebellum South. If you walk Charleston streets or visit old cemeteries, you may hear sanitized versions of her story, focusing on the dangers to plantation elites. Less often told is the full truth. Rebecca's actions were one woman's desperate attempt to balance scales deliberately weighted against her. Perhaps the most fitting memorial is not a marker, but the uneasy silence surrounding her tale, a silence that, when broken, reveals stories we are still trying to understand. History, like poison in a bloodline, continues to influence lives in visible and invisible ways. Sunset over Charleston's marshes casts long shadows across the land, and the story of Rebecca and the Rutledge whispers through the trees, reminding us that beneath the surface of even the most ordered society lie currents of rage, resistance, love, and loss, emerging when least expected, changing lives forever. The last records of the Rutledge case were sealed in the state archives in 1971, considered too sensitive for public access. Whether they survive is unknown, but the story persists, passed down through generations, evolving slightly with each telling while keeping its essential truth. In a world where justice is denied, revenge may become a terrible substitute, echoing across decades. In 2004, during renovations of a Charleston building once housing the law offices of William Harrison Rutledge, workers found a hidden compartment with a small wooden box. Inside were personal effects, a tarnished silver locket, a folded piece of yellowed paper, and a small vial of dark liquid. The locket contained 2 strands of hair, DNA suggesting a close familial connection. The paper documented the sale of a 3-year-old mulatto girl named Sarah to the Baker family, relatives of the woman who would become Sarah Elizabeth Rutledge. The vial contained traces of arsenic, belladonna, and plant compounds consistent with those used in 1844 to poison Sarah and William. In 2007, University of South Carolina researchers conducted a survey of the old plantation site. They found the foundations of the main house, outbuildings, and a previously unknown structure near Rebecca's cabin. Artifacts dated to 1820-1825 suggested Rebecca had given birth to a child, attempting to protect it through charms and other measures. Letters from 1840–1843 revealed the child had been sold and mistreated, which likely motivated Rebecca's later revenge. She waited until after Sarah's third child to begin poisoning, ensuring prolonged suffering for maximum effect. In 2011, a descendant of Mary, Rebecca's friend, and the servant whose testimony convicted her, shared a family document written in 1872. Mary had observed Rebecca's preparation of herbs and poisons for years, but remained silent, torn between loyalty and conscience. She acted only to protect the children, particularly infant James. Mary revealed that Rebecca intended to poison every member of the Rutland and Baker families within her reach. Whether she fully succeeded is unknown, but decades later, both families experienced unexplained illness, infertility, and early death. The historical record cannot fully answer whether these were the effects of Rebecca's vengeance or the result of war, economics, and time. What is clear, however, is that Rebecca's story represents far more than just a case of murder or revenge. It reflects the complex moral world of American slavery, where ideas of justice, loyalty, and right and wrong were twisted beyond recognition. In a system where humans were legally treated as property, where families could be torn apart at a slaveholder's whim, where sexual abuse was common and unquestioned, normal moral rules could not capture the full depth of human suffering and response. In 2015, the Charleston City Council discussed a proposal to include Rebecca's story in the city's official historical tours. After long debate, the idea was rejected, with concerns it would show the city's history in a negative light and focus on division instead of unity. That decision itself became part of the ongoing story, showing how some histories are still ignored or silenced in favor of more comfortable narratives. Despite official hesitation, Rebecca's story has continued to spread through other channels. Nighttime tour guides focusing on Charleston's darker past include versions of it in their programs. Community theater groups have performed dramatic interpretations. Writers and artists have drawn inspiration from this tale of power, resistance, and revenge. The story refuses to vanish, perhaps because it touches something deep about America's uneasy relationship with its past. In 2019, after a severe hurricane hit the South Carolina coast, flooding uncovered something long buried on the former Rutland plantation land. As the waters went down, locals noticed unusual shapes in the soil of an area that had been underwater for generations. The outlines of what looked like a garden, perfectly preserved under layers of sediment. Botanical archaeologists from Clemson University excavated the site and found remnants of medicinal and poisonous plants, many not native to the region, but likely known to someone familiar with African herbal traditions. The garden matched historical accounts of Rebecca's medicinal garden, which had been allowed by William's father decades earlier. Soil analysis showed certain toxic plants had been cultivated for at least 20 years before 1844, suggesting Rebecca's plan had been in the works far longer than anyone had realized. Most chilling was a small stone marker buried in the garden's center, carved with a simple circle with a line through it, a symbol tied to West African traditions about justice and balancing debts. The stone dated back to around 1825, the year Rebecca's daughter was sold from the plantation. These findings indicate that Rebecca's revenge was not a sudden act of rage or despair, but a careful, long-planned strategy. She had grown both her plants and her patience, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back at the suffering she had endured, the slow, painful loss of her family, the helplessness of seeing loved ones harmed without being able to help. Modern toxicology studies suggest the combination of substances Rebecca used, arsenic, belladonna, and other plant toxins, would mimic illnesses common at the time. Administered gradually, they would build up in victims' bodies, causing symptoms that confused physicians. The careful dosing indicates deep knowledge of these effects. likely gained through years of observation and experiment. The question haunting this story is not whether her actions were right or wrong by usual moral standards. Few would justify poisoning anyone, but what justice could mean when all legal paths were blocked. In a system designed to protect slaveholders' property over human lives, where mothers could lose children like objects, what could justice look like? Rebecca's answer shocks us because it shows the moral corruption of the system that produced it. In 2022, a Rutledge family descendant in Massachusetts shared family papers preserved for generations, including a journal kept by Catherine Rutledge, the middle child, 6 years old at her mother's death. Written from young adulthood onward, it reflected on childhood memories and what she was later told about 1844. Catherine remembered Rebecca as a constant, comforting presence, the woman who delivered her, cared for her through illnesses, and taught her about plants. She described the shock and betrayal of learning the same woman had poisoned her mother and tried to kill her father and brother. Over time, she understood more about Rebecca's daughter and the role her own family played. In an entry from 1871, Catherine wrote, "I find myself in the impossible position of mourning both my mother and the woman who took her from me. I cannot help but wonder, had our roles been reversed, what I might have done if my child had been torn from me and destroyed by those claiming ownership." There was no resolution, no way to balance these scales. Catherine moved north after the Civil War, partly to escape the legacy of slavery and the moral complications it brought. She never had children, fearing that the poison running through the system was deeper than any substance Rebecca had used. Thomas Rutledge, the eldest child, took another path. After selling the plantation in 1871, he stayed in contact with former slaves, including Richard, the stable master. Letters preserved in the Maryland Historical Society show Thomas believed his father knew about Rebecca's daughter all along, but stayed silent. "There was a reckoning that was long overdue," he wrote, "though I cannot help but wish it had come differently." James Rutledge, the infant who nearly became Rebecca's third victim, became a doctor. His journals, found in 2008 at Johns Hopkins University, reveal a focus on poisons and antidotes. Whether this was to understand what nearly killed him or mere coincidence is unknown. Rebecca's story has no simple ending or moral. It remains a complex tale of choices within a corrupt system. It shows that the legacy of slavery cannot be reduced to good versus evil, but is a moral disaster touching everyone involved. In Charleston's marshlands, where plantations sink into the earth and ghosts linger, Rebecca's story still resonates. Local lore claims that on certain nights, a woman moves silently among the trees, gathering plants and speaking in a forgotten language. Some even report smelling boiling herbs where no one lives. These stories show how communities remember and process difficult histories, keeping the past alive in the present. In 2023, archaeology at the former Charleston workhouse, where Rebecca was executed, revealed a mass grave of prisoners and executed people. Forensic study found remains of a woman aged 50 to 60, with arthritis in her hands, matching someone who worked with herbs and midwifery. While positive identification was impossible, the remains fit Rebecca's profile. Community leaders and historians oversaw a reburial ceremony, attended by descendants of both enslaved people and slaveholders, a small step toward reckoning with history. As we end this story, questions remain. What does justice look like after such atrocities? How do we face the past honestly while seeking healing? Rebecca's voice survives in fragments through those who recorded her, but her story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about America. In her final court statement, she said, "I brought them into this world. It was fitting that I should usher them out. What was taken from me cannot be restored. What I have taken cannot be undone. There is a balance in all things." Her words reflect not just one woman, but a society that made such tragedies possible. The poisoned bloodlines of this history extend beyond the Rutledges and Bakers into our present, into ongoing inequality and trauma. Rebecca's story challenges us to consider what poisons remain, what remedies might exist, and what real healing requires. As night falls over Charleston, her presence lingers, not as a simple villain or victim, but as a human responding to inhuman circumstances. Her story whispers still, refusing easy judgment or forgetting. Perhaps the truest memorial to Rebecca and those trapped in her world is the ongoing work of facing our shared history with honesty, acknowledging its weight and contradictions, and imagining a future where the poisoned legacies of the past might finally be healed.